1 in 5 teens show signs of anxiety and depression. 1 in 7 teens have been diagnosed with mental disorder, and more than half of young adults believe they lack meaning and purpose in their lives. We root this to the lack of self-awareness. The Harvard Business Review shows that while 90% of people believe they're self-aware, only 10% actually are. There's a silent epidemic society is facing, and it's an invisible loss that is shaping our future. This is what we call the great mental warfare.
It's troubling. I think it's troubling, like where we're heading if we continue down the same path. I think it's troubling. I think this generation there's so many special people in it. I think the problem is they're overwhelmed, overstimulated, and just really, really like tired in a sense. So we have an illusion of choice in this country. I don't think we have actual choice. So that's something I think we need to work on for sure.
What's up, everyone? This is Daniel over here, founder and CEO of DMD Network, a social enterprise dedicated to helping young people find clarity and career direction. However, today we are not here to talk about that. We are here to talk about the problem we're trying to bring awareness and trying to solve, and that is the great mental warfare. And today, I have a very special guest with me. He's been a mentor of mine throughout high school. And he's just an amazing person. I can't wait for you guys to learn more about him. He's an educator. He's a teacher, college professor, poet, author. I mean, he does a lot. He does a lot. He also raps too. Back in the bus with us. But I'll kind of flip it over to him. Mr. Lancia, how are you doing?
Hi, thanks for having me, Danny. This is awesome. It's a pleasure to be here. It's nice to be inside instead of outside where this humidity and mugginess is crazy. So thanks for having me and giving me an excuse to stay in. That's good.
Yes. Like I mentioned, we are here to talk about the great mental warfare. Right now, there's a lack of self-awareness, support, and education in our youth, and it's an invisible loss that is shaping our future. And anxiety, depression, and loneliness is at an all-time high. 1 in 5 teens showing signs of anxiety, depression, and loneliness. Third leading cause among young adults is suicide, and 1 in 7 have been diagnosed with mental disorders. More than half of young adults believe they lack meaning and purpose in their lives. And for anyone who works with young people and sees what's going on, we notice that there is this crisis of identity, this crisis of purpose. And today, we want to illustrate the perspective of the mental warfare through an educator, through an adult. So, Mr. Lancia, how long have you been teaching, and what educational positions have you had in the past?
Yeah, so this is in September. This will be my 14th year as an English teacher. I taught in Providence at Classical and Hope High School. I've taught, obviously, in the last quite a few years, 12 to 13. I've been in Cranston West, Western Hills, and the last 4 years, I've also been a professor on top of that at Bryant University and New England Tech. And obviously, I coached basketball and track for a really long time, along with those things. So I've seen middle school kids, high school kids, college kids over the last 14 years. So it's been quite a ride. It's been a blast. I've enjoyed a lot of it. I've enjoyed most of it, but as we've said in the conversations we've had in the past, in the last few years, things have changed mightily. So it's becoming more and more of a challenge than ever before in the last couple of years. Particularly after COVID and trying to bounce back from that. So. I've been at it for a while. Like I said, about 14 years, and a lot of good times, a lot of great memories, and recently it's been tougher than ever. So that presents a new set of challenges.
Hey, for those who don't know, Mr. Lancia is actually kind of like a legend here in Cranston. I was he's known, and he's known. A lot of young people love him. Like he's the type of teacher that people want to go to and want to talk to and hear about. I remember in 7th grade when I was on the track team, you were the coach at Western Hills, and I remember everybody talking about you. And then 8th grade, you were my main basketball coach.
Yeah.
And We had a full circle moment when I went to PCD, and you were the high school coach there.
Yep.
So it's almost like you're everywhere, man. You're everywhere.
I've been around. I've been around. I live by interest your heart in everything, do everything you can, and at the end of the day, hopefully that adds up to a pretty good life, So
Yeah,
that's what
yeah.
I like to
A
do.
life,
Do
a
as much
life
as
of
you can.
service. Hmm. A life of service is one well lived.
That's
So for someone who has been teaching for 14 years and is a college professor and has been working with so many young people, my question to you is, where do you see the great mental warfare now? Like, when you hear everything I just mentioned about the mental warfare, what comes to mind and where do you see it?
we've like I said, we have a relationship still to this day, and like we've talked about before. For me, the word I use all the time when you reference the great mental warfare is apathy, and obviously that word, has a deep meaning, right? Like apathy is almost the inability to care, right? It's like you don't really care about doing things. It's like a lack of motivation, right? Like a lack of overall care, I would say. And for me, that's what I'm seeing the most in today's like student, or today's modern student, if you will. It's that lack of motivation. I can remember, 10 or so years ago where a lot of kids had that spark, right? That spark of like, oh, I want to learn. I just want to learn to learn. It wasn't for a grade, it wasn't to graduate, it wasn't for anything like that. And I think today that's kind of what's missing. It's that spark, just wanting to learn, to learn. And I don't see it as much. And I think apathy is that's a big problem. That lack of motivation, that lack of overall care. I think apathy is the big one for me. And I guess the question moving forward, and the greatest challenge I'm facing, is how do you get people to care, right? How do you motivate people? How do you get people to, and that's why the work you're doing is so important, because I feel like that's your question too, right? Like, how do you motivate people to want to do something with themselves? How do you get people to want to have a purpose, Um, and I
And
think this is important stuff, Like, what's the point of life if you're not trying, So I think what you're doing is great, and that's why I, wanted to come on and talk today, because I think this is the question of this age.
yeah, no, for sure, for sure. So you mentioned that the lack of apathy, the lack of motivation, the lack of purpose. How does that show up in the classroom? And what do you think is contributing to this lack of purpose?
So for me, I see a couple things. It's the almost the disassociation, right? Where okay, so we know technology, and we know phones, can be a good thing. However, I'm seeing it as a real distraction, as real competition within the classroom, where most kids just want that quick fix, that quick dopamine. They want to um, whatever you're talking about, or whatever you're trying to teach them, is not as important as what's on that phone.
Mm.
That's the problem. That's like, that's what teachers are dealing with. Teachers are competing, and they're in constant competition, and phones have really changed the game. They've really changed the classroom in such a monumental way. I don't think people really understand it if you're not in it or living it or teaching, um, because it's just so different. Like I remember when I started, it wasn't even a thing or a question. Like no nobody like cared. Um, and now phones are rampant. So yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I do. I think that's a big part of it.
You said competing for your attention. You mentioned that a lot of young people today, it's really, you said that it's hard for teachers to get their attention because you're competing with the phone.
Mhm.
So why is it, or do you see a shift in what young people are prioritizing today? Why not maybe kids are seeing the value in education, or why do you think they're so concerned about their phone over what's happening in their present daily lives?
That's a great question. I like what you said about the value in education. Why don't we see the value in education? And wow. It's funny because I go back to even like the previous generations always told us, right? They always told you, like, go to school, study hard, get your degree, get your master's, like, stay in school, blah, blah, blah. And I think we always believed that, right? We believed like that would get you to where you want to be. And I still believe education can do that. I think education is the doorway to a better life. I've always believed that. However, I think you're seeing such a drastic shift where like we don't value it as much because we're seeing people blow up and get really, really wealthy in ways we've never ever seen before, right? So, oh, this guy's a streamer, this guy's a YouTuber, this guy's a rapper, this girl's a singer, this girl does she does modeling for Gymshark or whatever, and it's like you're seeing people get amazing, incredible amounts of money. And I think those things we preached may not resonate so much anymore because they're saying, well, this guy and this girl, they didn't go to school, they didn't study, and they got millions of followers and millions of dollars. So why would I see the value in what you're teaching me, I think that's a drastic shift we've never ever seen before, which is really interesting. That's really, really interesting to
So
me.
I'm so glad you brought this up because I wasn't even gonna go this way, but like I want to bring awareness to this challenge that you're mentioning, which is now is you're saying that, oh, because you see so many people skyrocket into success, you see that, oh, that means that has to be my path.
Mm.
It's very similar. It's almost like this influencer culture is negatively impacting young people at a large scale, and it's invisible, and it's an invisible loss. It's very similar to athletes when they say they want to go D1. So if you go to a lot of underserved communities, you ask, like in me growing up YMCA, you ask me that question, you ask my peers that question, where do you want to go? I want to play D1 college, I want to go to the NBA. But realistically, how possible is that?
Mm.
It's less than 1%, right? So we spend all of our childhood, all of our time devoted to one thing that actually might not actually bear fruit for us in the sense that we think. And now I'm seeing that with young people, like, oh, like in terms of going to the NBA, it's like I want to be an influencer. Now, before I even continue to talk about this topic, what is the percentage of people that actually end up becoming famous and successful? Because I remember you gave me the stats. I don't know if you could remember them and share them real
I
quick.
got it. The overlap of wealth and fame is so small, estimate. Around 0.005%, 1 in 20,000 people become both rich and famous. This includes A-list celebrities, elite athletes, top CEOs, media moguls, etc. So 1 in 20,000 people, so 0.005% out of the 330 million or so people in America would be famous, rich and famous. So I think, yeah, I think you're right. I think why are we so obsessed with that? Like what you're on to is we should be driving and striving for purpose, not for wealth and fame. And throughout that purpose, then maybe you can accumulate, some of that wealth or some of that notoriety. And I think that's the people just want fame for fame's sake. They don't want to do anything worthwhile or purposeful to get there, which is a whole nother topic.
Yeah, I mean, it's like now, like young people are kind of because it's so blooming, like the influencer trend, because it's blooming young people, they think like that's the career for them. And like now you see all these things online because if you don't have that, you believe that you're a failure.
Mm.
And it's funny because in Oxford, when we did Map the System, the research presentation on the Great Mental Warfare, I spoke to an educator there, and she's someone she works with young people, and she did a survey into their school department, and I don't remember the name of it, but it was 6th through 10th grade, and they part of the questions in the survey, it says, what do you want to grow up, like what do you want to be when you grow up, and guess what they said?
How to streamer, influencer, yeah.
About like 70 to 80%, it said that I want to be an influencer, and then the other thing was like the stockbroker thing,
Yeah, yeah.
like those Andrew Tate fans, yeah, like so it's crazy.
Crypto,
It,
crypto,
it,
stock
it's
bro.
it's it's so bad because now instead of going within and saying, okay, what do I want to do? What am I passionate about? How can I serve the world in my own unique way? No, they're like, I have to be this because this is what success means. So I invite any young person listening to this to ask yourself, is your dream really yours, or is it what society's influencing you to become? Another example is like when I went to college. When I went to college, I always asked three simple questions. I was like, what's, and everybody, like when you first get to college and you introduce yourself, you say, hey, my name is this, and what is your major? But I always ask a third question. What do you want to do with your major? And I remember like my first 10 to 15 conversations as a freshman in college, I asked them what they wanted to be. And they said influencer and the stockbroker stuff. So now I'm like, what's going on? Right? And it's so bad because there's so many paths that can be carved out for each unique person. And that's what we're trying to bring to find your mission. But I mean, yeah, like it's bad because now, like you mentioned, kids are paying more attention to their phones rather than what they should be really be paying attention to.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I, re- I,
Now,
I remember like years ago, you would have people in class like about to graduate. They'd be seniors, and you would go around the room. What does everyone want to be when they graduate and get out of here? What do you want to go major in? And you had people who wanted to be cops. They wanted to be firefighters. They wanted to be teachers. They wanted to be healthcare. They wanted to be this, that. And now it's so odd and interesting to me. Like those things have really, and you're seeing it too, right? Like there's teacher shortages all over the country. Like there's shortages in all these in healthcare and all these fields where I don't think people want to do these things anymore, you know. And the you could a simple Google search would show you that, but that's also scary. Like we need people to make society work, right? We need people to
yeah,
make society like as a whole. Like we need someone to run the library. We need someone to run the fire department. We need someone to run the school department. Like it's kind of scary. Like if everyone's an influencer, then who's gonna make sure like the city runs, or the state runs, or the country runs? So it's just it's really strange. So yeah, I think we definitely need some purpose driven lives. You know, we need to figure out there's got to be more than just Instagram.
right, right. Yeah, yeah. It's like everybody's trying to be a content creator now.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
okay, so based on what we talked about and like the level of how young kids are, teachers have to compete with the phones for attention. How do you see this affecting young people today? What are some like everyday examples of you seeing the mental warfare happen?
I think so. When we do senior portfolios at my school, it's like where all the seniors graduate and they tell you, they show you their best work, they tell you their plans for the future, what they want to do, but they also share their greatest struggles during the senior portfolio. And so many kids throughout the last couple of years have always talked about, anxiety, depression, too much social media, bullied, this, that, the other thing. Like so many kids during that senior portfolio. COVID, still to this day, how bad that was for people and sitting alone and not connecting with people and how awful that was for them. Like you see that all the time. And I think what you're I think what I'm seeing on a day to day basis is like it used to be a hidden thing, right? Where you may not have known it as a teacher, but now I'm seeing that kids are so much more vocal about actually how unhappy they are in their current situation, and I think I'm seeing that, I'm hearing that more often than ever, and kids are really vocal about the things they're going through and how difficult life is as someone who's 14 to 18 years old. And I think that's the big thing. This isn't like a secret. This is, you know what I mean? This isn't something that nobody knows. Like these kids are telling you, hey, like life is really, really difficult right now, and it's really difficult in this era. And as I said, with all those things, bullying, social media, anxiety, depression, like mostly everyone is dealing with one of those things over the course of their 4 years of high school. So, I and I guess your original question, like, what's your day to day like? I'm leaving a lot more drained every day because now my role of teacher is so much more, right? Now I'm like guidance counselor, social worker, psychologist, psychiatrist, on top of just trying to teach English. So, it's tiring. It's really, really tiring where kids are struggling, kids are really struggling, and they're letting it be known. They're vocal about it. And I think that's crucial. That's something like we have to recognize. Kids are telling us they're not happy, and I'm sure you've experienced that too. And I'd love to hear about that. Even like I'm sure with your seminars and your programs and everything you do, you see it and hear it too.
Yeah, we definitely see that, and that's actually it's good that you're highlighting the fact that, oh, like, you're a teacher, but now you always have to become like a social worker, guidance counselor, because it is like kids have more emotional baggage, so they're bringing it to the classrooms, and that's why it's very important for us in Find Your Mission to create those environments for young people to have those conversations, to talk about how they're feeling, to talk about what they want to do, because there's no time carved out in the educational system for students to pause and think and reflect. That's why it's so important that we create that, so that doesn't keep taking place.
I every day when I start my classes, every single day when I take attendance, I always ask every single person one by one, like, "Hey, how's it going today?" And most of the time you'll get, "Yeah, pretty good. It's okay, whatever." But once in a while, more often than not, you do get a couple kids say, "Not so good today. Things aren't going well,"
Hmm.
and which is positive. So, I even if it's that 2 second check, I think like we could all do that at least like that. Take that 2 seconds to check on each kid and see how they're doing today, because they will tell you. They will tell you if they're not feeling good or not having a good day. So that's important too.
Yeah, yeah. So when talking about the mental warfare, um, I know that you are a high school teacher, but you're also a college professor. How do you see that? How do you see the mental warfare amongst college students as well?
Yeah, college is interesting. I teach at Bryant University and I teach at New England Tech, and I used to do URI, University of Rhode Island, and I've been around and seen a lot of that. And college is really, really interesting to me because what I'm noticing is, and this will probably segue and hit some of your other points. What I'm noticing is they are so tuned in and locked in with AI. They are so into artificial intelligence, and I'm noticing over the last couple of years it's really become extremely difficult for them to use their own minds and have their own thoughts, where I think a lot of them feel, and some of them have vocalized this and said this to me, I feel like I'm like falling behind if I'm not using AI because everyone else is using it. So if I don't use it, then I feel like a dope. And that's like I've really noticed at the higher levels, there's like more use of AI and more cheating than I've ever seen in the last year or two. And that's staggering. That's something to be concerned about. We talked about that video of the UCLA kid graduating, and he's in the crowd showing his laptop and showing all the projects he used AI to create, and everyone's clapping and going nuts for him. And I'm like, this is so wrong, like on so many
Mhm.
levels.
Wait, so why? What was exactly that he was showing on the screen? Just
So
for background context.
he opened. So during the UCLA graduation, this kid was in his cap and gown in the crowd with all his peers, and he opens his computer and he's scrolling through all his Chat GPT final projects that the computer and the program created for him, and he was like all fired up and rah rah and showing everyone, hey, I cheated and did all this, and all the kids around him were clapping and like applauding this, and I'm just it's one of those things, like I said, that higher level, I mean, kids are really, really, cheating their way through it. It's kind of it's almost insane. I mean, I'm reading articles every single day about, college kids on, even at the Ivy League level, they say they're getting college kids who've never read a novel. They've never read a novel. They don't really read books anymore. And I'm not making this up. You can you can look at
Okay, okay. So, okay. So now I have okay. So I have two things that I want to share from that. The first one is you mentioned that kids are no kids are no longer using their thoughts. They're using AI to think for them.
yeah.
So I want to talk about the effects of that, and then I want to cover um, the second thing where you mentioned like kids using AI for everything, and then how teachers are reacting to this. Like if we're if we're studying, if our entire educational experience we are using AI to think for us, then where is our level of critical thinking? Where is our level of self awareness? Because if we're whatever you give attention to, you become. So if you constantly give your attention to the AI think for you, you become a robot yourself. And that's kind of what we were talking about the other
Yeah.
day. Like,
I mean,
so I mean,
it's gone. I mean, it's gone. Your critical thinking is gone. Your reading, your even your soft skills, your empathy, your whatever. Like every, I mean, it's just it's sad because I remember I remember that when you were a kid growing up, and obviously you grew up in the cell phone era way more than me, but you didn't have AI to the extent that it is today. And
right.
I remember like you would genuinely have to put at some point in your academic career, you would have to put something together of merit, right?
Mhm.
Whether it be like your senior panel or your senior portfolio or whatever the case may be, or a big paper, a big project. At some point, you would have to rally and like show what you're capable of, right?
Mhm.
I think the biggest thing missing is that like where is that? How do we know these kids are ready to go out into the world? Like what have they shown that they can do? What have they shown? I don't know what they've shown. I really don't because if 90% of it is AI'd or Chat GPT'd or whatever the case may be, how do I know you're capable of doing anything? That's scary. That's like really scary. I think, and that's why I always say like the whole education system needs to be reworked and rewired at this point because, how are we ever going to know again what's genuine and what's not? How you're gonna just play AI police or Chat GPT police forever now and ask those questions like that. Oh, is this real? Did you do this or did you not do this? Like that's exhausting. So now as a teacher, you're not really grading or assessing. You're just policing and you're saying, did you do this? Did you write this? Did you do this? Did you write this? And like, what is that? That's not fair
Right.
to anybody. So that's a whole nother thing. I don't know. I don't
Oh
know.
my God, you're bringing so many topics up, so many like loopholes that we can go into. But I definitely agree with that. I mean, like if all this energy time is being spent policing, then the energy is not going towards the educating.
100%.
So it's like we're creating an entire educational system where kids are not learning anything at all because for the memorization you have the AI, and then for the critical thinking you have the AI as well. So that's why it's so important for students to just pause and think and create that time, that structured time for them to develop self awareness, which is was already not there with social media. So it was already bad with social media. Now you add AI on top of this. I mean, it's just worse.
And I liken it to like both of us, we've been basketball players our whole life and in the gym our whole life. And like, I went to the gym this morning and I worked out, and I liken school to, that's where you would go to work out your brain.
Mhm.
And I feel like imagine if you went to high school for 4 years and you never worked out not one day in your life. That's what's happening to your brain. It's like you're not working out your brain for one day over 4 years. Your brain is definitely getting stagnant, right? It's not learning, it's not growing, it's not, as you said, even the basic things that like memorization. I remember having vocabulary tests where at least you had to like memorize a word and take the test. I don't, we're not even working out our brain. We're not even giving it that simple workout of like, hey, memorize this. Now it's, You don't have to memorize anything. You don't have to synthesize anything. The creation is scary because that's where I got my best work done as a student, like showing what I could create, showing what I could synthesize. And now no one's creating or synthesizing anything. It's like, well, I'll just chat GPT. I don't care. I don't have time. So, um,
And
yeah,
this just came to mind, and you mentioned why, like kids. You mentioned that kids are losing the spark. I feel like what you just mentioned could be a reason why kids don't have that spark again, because creativity lights something within you, and if you're using an AI to do it, then where is your spark? If kids don't know their purpose, they don't see the value in the educational system because they want to be an influencer or they want to do this, they want to do that. Like, it's not. I don't think that education is wrong. It's just necessarily like they don't see how they themselves align with it because they don't know what their clarity and career direction is, or like what their purpose is. So, I mean, yeah, like if kids are not training the muscles, then what do we do now?
yeah.
Which leads me to my next question: is like, what are what are educators doing about this? Like when teachers see that other students are using AI, or the principals, like from the high school and college level, like how are other teachers reacting to it?
So the college level is definitely, at least I can speak to the colleges I work at, New England Tech and Bryant. They are very, um, I would say they're very good about having AI policies, right? They want the kids who are going there to be able to do the work. They don't want you to rely on AI or ChatGPT to do everything for you. So they have strict policies. If you get caught using those things, like there's a whole process, right? Um, that eventually could lead to you getting kicked out of the schools. So I feel like at the college level, they have the right things in play where they're trying to preach to the kids like, okay, no more cheating, guys. Like we don't want you to cheat. We want you to use your brains. We don't want chat GPT stuff. And then I think the high school level it's a little
And
different.
wait, before you go into the high school, because you were talking about college,
Yeah.
do you think it works though? Do you think do
That's
you think, like, let's be real, let's be real. Do you think college students actually like look at that policy, or do you not think that college kids have a way to go around it?
I personally don't think that policy is working.
Mm.
That my thoughts and reflect. My thoughts are nobody's words but my own. That's not a reflection of either of those universities. But I personally don't think it's working. I think they're finding ways around it. I think they're finding new programs. They're finding other things that work. I think yeah, you know, having an AI do something for you is the way most college kids want to go these days, and it's scary. You're seeing I'm seeing it every day. And
Mm. And then what do you think about like high school? Like,
I think the high school level it's so new. It's so incredibly new and difficult for people to even understand or wrap their head around. There's not even really like hard, fast, concrete rules about AI. There's nothing like written down in hardcore in the policy book. Obviously we discourage it. Obviously, we want them to do good work, but I think it's really hard to, again, you come to that whole issue of policing, and then you get into issues with, kids and parents and all this stuff of, is this your work? Is this not your work? And it becomes that whole game. And I think, it feels like a waste of time. Like
right.
who wants to do that? So, I don't know. I don't think, and we've talked about this. I think if you use ChatGPT, let's say you were writing a paper and you use it in the right way of like, okay, I need a couple ideas for a thesis statement on how I could write my paper about the great mental warfare, right? And you get a couple ideas and go from there and write your paper. I personally think like that's okay because you're using it as a tool. You're not using it as your whole thought.
Hmm.
And I think there's not a lot of that going on. So I think if we use it as a tool, it could be a good thing. But I don't think I don't think most people are doing that at all, you know.
Right.
So that's why we're having problems. That's
Mhm.
where we're at.
Okay. Yeah, no, I definitely see it. Like if you use it for your entire thinking, then what are you really training, like you mentioned, in your mind? Now I want to touch on another subject that has to do with AI. You know, kids right now, like you mentioned, are more anxious, depressed, worried than ever. So from what I've seen is that a lot of kids are now going to AI about their emotional problems. So you mentioned kids coming to you for a counsel, like you have to become a guidance counselor, a social worker. So now, because you mentioned because there's only one teacher, they don't have that support. They're now going to AI about those issues, and that I have seen from my experience can create a lot of problems. But what is your perspective on this, and where are you seeing it?
Yeah, I don't. I think anytime if you're having problems like anxiety, depression, anything like that, I think you should speak to a licensed professional at any time. I don't think you should be typing in your feelings into Chat GPT and hoping they give you the answers because I don't think they're trained to do that. You know, that's odd to me. That's
Mm-hmm.
frightening. But yeah, we're seeing that every day. You know, we're seeing that every day. Where again, the content. Like I'm paid to teach you English and teach you how to write and teach you how to read and teach you how to do those things. Where I may not get that stuff in like on certain days.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because we're having bigger problems, you know, and I think that is really really telling of this era where sometimes the content has to take a back seat. You know, sometimes the content has to really take a back seat because you have kids who have questions and then it becomes a whole group discussion and then you're like really cooking and everyone's talking and engaged and whatever and then you're like I was supposed to do something today but we ended up just having like a 45-minute talk about this stuff and that's you know that's where you know the kids really want to they really want to talk about those things in their world and their things that are happening and I think you do them a disservice if you don't. You know, you have to talk about their world sometimes. So it's challenging to balance the two things because they like these kids are dealing with more things than ever before. You can say what you want about the past, but I will say I think the past was a bit simpler than today's world. So I think their kids today are dealing with a more difficult world than ever before, and I think it shows sometimes in school because they want those outlets, and those outlets may not exist. You know, they
Mm-hmm.
may not exist.
Yeah. No, like I think it's so funny because I've seen this in my college experiences as well. But, that's why it's so important for these educational systems to create these spaces because if it's already happening, you might as well just make it a structured thing.
Yeah.
Like I have seen, and you were mentioning it too, how you're trying to teach a class, but you got all these problems at the same time. So why don't like there needs to be time where educational systems create that time for self reflection and for people to talk about those things so it doesn't overlap. So no, and I definitely agree with a lot of those things that you said.
And that's like why what you're doing is special and important. You know, you're giving people that time to, you know, to find those things that are really important to them. You know, and we need to do that. We need to do that a bit more. It's there's not a lot of time for self discovery or purpose, and I think a little bit of downtime would probably do a lot of kids some wonder. You know, instead of being always engaged every 2 seconds. So
Right, right. And I think a lot of things when it comes to this work, like people think that, oh, it's just young people, but no, like where I remember we talked about this, but where do you see this taking place in adults, and what's the ripple effect if you don't take that time to reflect when you're young? Because sometimes people say, oh, you're young, you need to figure it out, or you just don't know because you're young. But no, like you need that time to reflect. And from your experience, what have you seen as an effect of young people who don't do that, and then they become adults and they have maybe disempowered or less fortunate life because they didn't take that time.
Yeah, I that's a great question. I think we need to see life as more of a process and not oh, I'm 18 years old or I'm 22 years old or whatever, and now I'm a finished product. I don't believe in that anymore, and that's through a lot of living my own life where um I I I had the misfortune of living life like a checklist, you know. First you graduate high school, then you graduate college, then you get your master's, then you get a job, then you buy a house, then you do this, then you do that, and like I had lived life like a checklist. And once you get rid of that checklist, then you can find purpose, and which is what you're all about. And I think we need to stop living life like it's a checklist, and we need to live life like it's, you know, to find your purpose and what's going to make you the most useful in your life. And you know, it took me a while. It took me a long time to realize I have to stop checking these boxes because every time I checked a box, yeah, that was great. It was an achievement, but it wasn't fulfillment. And
Mm.
achievement versus fulfillment is a big thing. It's like it's intrinsic versus extrinsic. I was doing a lot of extrinsic things. I was checking these boxes and achieving these goals, and it didn't mean anything though. It wasn't fulfilling. It wasn't fulfilling my intrinsic values. So we definitely need to feed our intrinsic selves. And if you don't feed your intrinsic self, like that's the beauty of life. We're not a finished product. We can change at any moment, you know? We can change at any moment. And I think when you're an adult, like I just turned 35, and you know, if something's not right with me, I can sit down, I can assess it, I can make a change. And I think we all have to do that all the time. You don't want to be the 25-year-old who gets out of college and gets the job and then is like totally miserable for the rest of your life. Like you need to sit down and literally take the time and reflect and journal and see what you're grateful for and thankful for and see what you need to switch up, you know? And that's a big part of my life now is, you know, the intrinsic versus the extrinsic, trying to figure out what's going to fulfill me and it's not just an achievement that I can check off a box.
Mm. Wow, that's deep. That was deep. That was deep. But hey, we needed to hear. We needed to hear it. Okay, so so what happens now? Like, if nothing changes, what happens to this next generation? What happens if we as a society don't make these shifts? Like, what is the trajectory of the youth right now?
Um, I I listened to the other day Mark Zuckerberg, who obviously everyone knows, who created Facebook and you know, is in charge of Meta AI and is doing like a lot of fascinating things. And he was on Theo Vaughn's podcast the other day, and um, it is like so his thought process and other like leaders in this industry, their thought process is they're going to give you choices, as many choices as they can, right, to how you want to live your life. um I think having choice is great, but I think sometimes too much choice is overwhelming. And I think this generation coming up, I think a big problem is they have too much choice, which is leading them all to choose the same thing and go down the same path. As you said, like everyone wanting to be an influencer or everyone wanting to be involved in technology or crypto or stocks. Like, um, I don't know. I don't think it's the greatest thing to have the illusion of choice, which is what I'm calling it. I think people think they have so much choice, but they really don't because everyone's going into the same things.
Hmm.
So I think we need to get back to having true, genuine choice and wanting to basically figure out how you can be most useful in your life and how you can help others in the best way possible. So I don't know. I don't think this generation gets like the respect they do because everyone, you know, the popular opinion is that, oh, these people got it so easy and nobody wants to work and blah 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 and this generation stinks, and I don't agree with that at all. I think this generation is, there's so many special people in it. I think the problem is they're overwhelmed, overstimulated, and just really like tired in a sense. So um I think we need to fix that, and I think it does start with education. I think we need to make education a bit more fulfilling and not just how do I get out of here and how do I get an A? Like, I think we need to
Yeah,
really sit down and see, like, how can we make school more appealing? How can we fix this system? And I don't know. I don't see. I guess to answer your question, I think it's troubling. I think it's troubling, like where we're heading if we continue down the same path. I think it's troubling. I think we have an illusion of choice in this country. I don't think we have actual choice. So that's something I think we need to work on for sure.
yeah. That's deep, but that's very well said. Well, it's like you mentioned, like it's an illusion of choice because are we really choosing our path? Is it when most of what we're aiming at is influenced by something else?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, it's deep. That's why, we need to pause and we need to go and we need to pause and we need to go within. So with that, that concludes our conversation. Hopefully everyone here walked away with more insight about what's happening in our youth today, not only from a student lens, but from an educator and adults lens. We thank all of you guys for watching, and this was a very enlightening conversation. Thank you, Mr. Lancia,
Thank you.
for giving us this opportunity. Super grateful, and hopefully, we can inspire other people to take action, to not only go within themselves, but inspire others to do the same. And if you're an educator, a principal, a teacher, a professor, this is what we're doing here at Find Your Mission. This is what we're dedicated to solve. So if you want to be involved, please reach out to us, and we would love to work with any educator. And if you're a young person as well listening to this, and you want to become an advocate for change, we have young leaders as well. So anything else you want to say, Mr. Lancia?
Oh, thank you for having me. It was always a pleasure. I love talking to you about this stuff. It's really interesting, and I always say I don't have the answers, but to put a final comment and a positive spin on this, I think there's so many special people and so many special kids out there that just need like the proper guidance and tools to really get the most out of their lives. And I think that's what you do. That's great. So keep it going, man. Keep doing it and keep helping people. And I think these conversations are great because they're difficult to have because they're not, and sometimes they're not what people want to hear, but it's true,
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you again. You've done so much for me, and this is just another thing you've done. But you're the man. You're the man, Mr. Lancia.
Thank you so much.
All right, and with that, I'll see you guys in the next episode.
All right.